This is my review of the HipStreet Micron IPR200 7DTB41-8GB Android tablet. The specifications are as follows: 1.3 GHz quad-core CPU, 7-inch capacitive multi-touch high-resolution display, 800 by 480 resolution, Android 5.1 Lollipop OS, 1 GB RAM, 8 GB internal memory, supports up to a 32 GB micro SD card, built-in Wi-Fi 802.11b GNN standards, rechargeable lithium battery, which is not removable, it's built into the housing of the device, 0.3 megapixel front camera, micro USB 2.0 jack, rear-facing speaker, multiple languages, and it is Google Play certified, so it supports the Google Play Android market. In the rather fancy packaging for a HipStreet product, aside from the tablet itself, you also have a quick user guide. You have a micro USB form factor AC adapter wall plug travel charger. You have a micro USB form factor charge and sync cable. And you have this cool adapter, which is micro USB male to USB standard female. And what this allows you to do is allows you to connect such things as mice, keyboards, USB speaking, USB mice, USB keyboard, even USB removable storage flash drives, so USB keys, for additional storage, which is pretty cool. That works pretty well. When it comes to the tablet itself will go with a physical tour. And by the way, if it looks like the screen is flickering right now, whenever connected to a charging source, which is AC adapter, so a wall plug travel charger, not a USB power feed from connected to a USB power source such as a PC, for example, then the screen flickers. Don't know why, it's just the way it is. You can charge the device when using it, albeit it charges much slower when in use. This also includes charging it from a USB passive source, such as a micro USB charge and sync cable connected to a PC. It can also charge from a passive USB connection, micro USB connection. So for example, if your PC is on sleep mode, standby or hibernate, it's not actively transferring data through the charge and sync cable, the device can still charge, which is good. The device can charge when it is off, and if you tap the sleep wake on off button, it shows you a graphical representation of that right there, the power, whoops, not that, shows you a larger graphical representation of that little graphic for the battery, and it'll show you how far the battery has been depleted, and it'll show you a small animation letting you know that it is in fact charging. The tablet itself takes a long time to boot up. It takes around 5 minutes. It should be noted that right now I have chocked this tablet full of applications, and this was in a means to test it. I loaded it with loads and loads and loads of dating apps, as you could see. And in doing so, I do have to say, when it comes to performance of the tablet itself, if you have 1 app, 2 app, 3 app, maybe even 4 app installed, the tablet will run fine. As soon as you go 5 or more apps, especially if they often communicate with the Wi-Fi network, they use a lot of memory and system resources, this tablet is terribly slow. It clugs, it chugs, it lags, a lot of latency. In fact, when it comes to using the keyboard, I'm going to disconnect the power feed. When it comes to using the on-screen keyboard, Right now things are pretty responsive, but I should note that I am not connected to my Wi-Fi. If I was connected to my Wi-Fi and all the apps I have installed were communicating, even just bringing up the keyboard and then tapping on the keyboard, there's such a latency and slowness. It takes maybe 1 second every time you type a key for it to appear in your string. And because of this latency, the key presses can miss keystrokes. It can produce incomplete words. Fortunately, in this Android 5 operating system, words that are misspelled, normally, now I can't do it because this is just a Google search, but normally you could tap on them, and in tapping on them you're given 3 suggestions, and you could choose from those. That works well, at least. So bringing up the keyboard slow under high use. Tapping on the keyboard is slow in its input, it's slow in its recognition. Furthermore, the Google voice typing, normally you would have a little microphone icon right up here in the upper right corner of the keyboard, and tapping on that, it opens up Google voice typing. Google voice typing in the setup, I didn't find a way to specify which languages I wanted it to recognize. Normally I choose English and French on most of my Android devices. On this one, it seems to be automatic, so I just, whether I'm speaking English or speaking French, the device will take a second or two to recognize, and then it will start transcribing what I write in the correct language, it would seem. Because this device is so slow when chock full of apps, what I've noted is in Google voice typing, first of all, initiating Google voice typing, that is to say, dismissing this keyboard, bringing up the Google voice typing interface, engaging the Google voice typing interface, and allowing you to begin to speak, takes a long time. It takes maybe 7 seconds, 8 seconds. Then it engages, you could start speaking. When it engages, you have to continue speaking, or else what will happen is the Google voice typing will go on pause, and then you have to tap on the screen to continue your dictation. Problem with that, once again, because of the latency, sometimes you miss your window to start talking because it took so long for Google voice typing to come up and initiate. By the time it initiates, it figures, oh, well, I waited this long, I might as well put it on pause. That's frustrating. Switching through apps, I showed that right there, so you could scroll through and switch through apps. You could also dismiss apps with the little crosses, the little X's, in order to dismiss them, as well as you could dismiss all. You could do the same thing with the notifications. See, for example, the notifications has two volets, two panes, if you will. You have the first for your notifications. You also have two for your settings, your brightness. As you can see, you could pump up the brightness quite a bit. Airplane mode, the screen orientation, location. Note that this is Google's location service based on Wi-Fi triangulation. This device does not have GPS hardware on it. Also, cast screen. Apparently, you could cast your screen to different devices that accept it. So you have a quick access to Wi-Fi as well. You have quick access to settings, which I was showing before. See, if you want to dismiss something, just, oops, that didn't work. There we go. You could also slide it away, I bet. Yep, that works too. Good, good. So right now, not being on my Wi-Fi with all my apps not communicating live, the device is usable, but I've had it where, like I said, so slow, so latent, chugging along. I've had it where it crashed quite a few times, where it just shuts down because it can't take it anymore. I've had it situations where I could no longer boot up the tablet and access the Android operating system. I had to boot up to a recovery. Booting up to a recovery, by the way, if you don't know, is you attach a USB wall plug, not USB, excuse me, a wall plug travel charger. You ensure that the device is fully charged. This is in the off state, and then when it's fully charged while the device is still plugged in on the HipStreet Micron, you boot up by holding the power button and holding the volume up button, and you do this until you get the recovery screen on your screen, on your front fascia. Upon receiving the recovery screen, you can in fact wipe your device and start anew if you wish, but in my case I didn't have to do so. Choosing reboot from the recovery screen for some reason brought the Android operating system back, complete with all my installed apps and settings and all of that, which is good. I don't believe we did a tour of the device. So, you have your front fascia, you have your 800 by 480 screen, 7-inch. You have your 0.3 megapixel camera here. You only have one camera on the device, no illumination, so no flash, no nothing of the sort. It's pretty low quality. It produces pretty choppy video. For example, there you go. I know it's not coming out very clear, but it gives you an idea of how slow the video capture is, how poor photo capture is. It's just all in all disappointing. It's a disappointing camera. Interesting to note, there is no web browser on this tablet. You only have Google Chrome to work with, so you better like Google Chrome. It's nice that they do include a file explorer, so I could explore the internal memory, the SD card, as well as USB storage if I connect USB storage using that nifty adapter I showed you. Here you see extracted APKs. Since this device does not have GPS hardware, many of the apps I was installing on it were deemed incompatible with this device solely because this device does not have GPS hardware on it. What I'd have to do is I'd have to, on a different Android device, download and install the apps from the Google Play Android market, then use another app known as APK Extractor by Meher. And what this does is this extracts the installer APK files. I was able to then transfer them to micro SD card, then transfer the micro SD card from my Android device to the HipStreet Micron. In the settings, enable installation of non-market applications. See, you could also slide away tabs to close them. Anyway, I had to enable the installation of non-market applications, and only through there could I then install these apps to my Android to my HipStreet Micron and use them on the HipStreet Micron. I can't speak towards games. I don't play games on mobile. For the most part, all of the dating apps that I've installed on the HipStreet Micron function. They function slow. They chug along. They're clunky. Once again, when I had just a few on, it worked fine, but as soon as I start adding more and more and more, the tablet the hardware just simply can't take it, so it chugs along very unimpressionately, if that exists. I was trying to convert a French word, sorry. Okay, so you have your 7-inch 800 by 480 resolution screen. We saw how bright it could go. You have 3 tactile buttons which are integrated into the UI, back, home, and apps. You have your 0.3 megapixel camera. Top nothing, left nothing, right nothing. On the bottom you have your rocker button for volume up, volume down. You have your micro USB form factor port. You have your 1/8 inch stereo audio mini jack, 3.5mm. You have your sleep wake on off button. On the back, HipStreet Micron tablet. Don't let this perforated, dimpled surface fool you. This is the slipperiest surface I've ever dealt with on an Android device. It's ridiculous. It doesn't want to stay put on anything. It always slides about. Very disappointing. HipStreet Micron, blah blah blah. Microphone porthole right there, so the microphone's on the back, even though the camera's on the front. Micro SD card slot. By the way, this device does not have a SIM card slot, so there's no data network, what's that called? Anyway, no data network connection available. There's no GSM hardware, there we go. 1 loudspeaker, so no stereo output. Is there anything else worth mentioning? I spoke about latency, I spoke about the system often crashing, I spoke about having to use the recovery to bring it back to life. When it comes to battery consumption for the most part is okay. It's fair. It's not great. It's not poor. As I mentioned, you can charge while using the tablet, albeit at a much slower scale. When charging from a USB connection from a computer, if too much is open, if too much is running, then you will still be consuming battery just at a slower scale instead of charging the device. That's why whenever I leave the device just on standby and charging with a connection to a computer, I usually have to go into About Device and Status and Maintained Battery Level and just look at that battery level over and over and over and ensure that it is proper. Apparently it supports printing, didn't play with that. Accessibility, nothing to speak of. Date and time, nothing to speak of. Backup and reset, not important. Language and input, nothing to speak of. Account security. Yeah. Oh, you could turn off screen lock, so every time you wake the device, it's ready to go. You don't have to do any patterns or swiping or anything like that. Location, once again, uses Google Location Service based on triangulation and not based on Wi-Fi triangulation, not GPS hardware, because there is no GPS hardware. Screenshot setting, you can produce screenshots with this. There's a couple of second delay which you cannot avoid, so you can't expect to capture the perfect moment at the perfect time. Rather, you have to be ready in order to capture the moment with like a 3-second lead up. Battery, very good. Storage, reported storage is but 4.71 gigs, despite the fact that they say it is 8 gigs. See, 8 gigs here, but that's on the SD card I have connected. Sound and notification, nothing to report. When it comes to Wi-Fi, I'll talk on Wi-Fi right now. You might have noted that I leave my device connected, oh by the way, to dismiss notifications. There's a button there you tap and it gets rid of all notifications. In leaving the device on my Wi-Fi network and then closing the screen, letting the screen time out anyway, what I've discovered is that the device, despite that I specify in the Wi-Fi settings that I do not want the device to disconnect from Wi-Fi, it'll still regularly disconnect from Wi-Fi. So what I found is that I have to keep the screen on, the screen running, Wi-Fi connected, and plug it into a charging source and leave it charging all the time in order to stay connected to my Wi-Fi. I then have to strategically unplug my charger, use my tablet, use up some of that battery, so it's not always just charging at 100%. That's what kills a battery, by the way. So I have to unplug, use my device, and then strategically replug. Generally, I try to do so over 50%, because if I do so under 50%, with the heaviness of all the apps that are installed and running, generally at that point the device will refuse to charge if it's still running with all the apps active, and rather it will just trickle down and use up the battery. Display, so you could disable sleep completely, which is good in this regard. You could disable the screen rotation. I like having a portrait layout and not a landscape. Launcher 3, that's what it's using. More airplane mode. I turned on airplane mode. I don't know why. There's no GSM hardware, but whatever. Teetering mode, portable hotspot VPN. I didn't play with that. There's apparently a data usage monitoring, so it lets you know what's been using up the most data. And Wi-Fi. So there you go. Overall, the HipStreet Micron tablet. If you're planning, once again, it is a cheap device. If you're planning to purchase it in the case whereby it is, for a kid or for occasional use or very limited use, and you're not planning to load it with apps and not planning to use it actively, I guess it could do the job. If you're the latter situation, such as me, where you plan to use it as your regular communication device, you plan to load it with apps, and you plan to use it all the time, there are probably better options out there for you. The reason I purchased this one was because of the price point. It was the cheapest one I could find. That's why I stuck with it. I'm not regretting my purchase. However, I always keep in mind that I have backup Android devices because I don't know how long this thing will last. My last HipStreet tablet, granted it was a HipStreet Vector, 4 gig, it had Android 2.3 on it. It lasted me 6 months before it was completely inoperable, and essentially I gave it to somebody because I had no use for it, for them to take it apart and play with it. Keep in mind though that HipStreet Vector did not have the recovery hotkey that allows access to the recovery menu. That being said, hopefully I could get more than 6 months out of this tablet. I hope so. If not, well, I got what I paid for, For now, it's doing what I need it to, albeit slowly, albeit clunkily, and yeah, overall just a disappointing product, but for the price I paid for it, it's doing what I need to do, so I'm going to tolerate it for now. There you go, I'll leave you with that. I hope this information helps, and as usual, all the best.